Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually we start these conversations with a sprint. Lots of data, headlines, trying to get to the bottom of something quickly. But today, well, today feels a little different.
It does. A bit slower.
Yeah, exactly. I want to slow down. I want to invite you, the listener, to just pause with us for a second. Because the territory we're exploring today isn't really about adding more information to your brain. It's about a feeling, a shift in how we see the ground under our feet.
Right. It's less of a lecture and more of a walk along a quiet path towards something most of us spend our entire lives running away from. Endings.
And beginnings. And that really messy, confusing middle part. So if you're listening right now, just take a breath. Let's actually go there. I want you to visualize something with me.
Close your eyes if you can. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a river at dawn. It's very quiet. The air is cool, maybe a little damp. The water is dark, moving slow and heavy, but it's trembling with those first silver threads of morning light.
I can see it. It's that suspended moment where the world hasn't quite started yet.
Now look down at the water. Watch a single leaf drift past your feet. Maybe it's crimson, curled at the edges. It drifts by, spins once in the current, and then vanishes around the bend. You never see it again.
And just like that, it's gone.
Gone. But the river flows on. Now, here is the core of what we really need to wrestle with today. When we see that leaf vanish, the human instinct, my instinct, your instinct, is to feel a pang of sadness, to feel loss. But I want to propose something radical here. This is not loss, this is rhythm.
This is rhythm. That sounds beautiful, but I have to be honest. It's really hard to feel that way when it's your life drifting around the bend. We're wired to see the ending of anything, a relationship, a job, a version of ourselves as a tragedy. You're saying the leaf moving on is just, what, physics?
It is physics, but it's also the fundamental nature of reality. In Buddhist thought, this is the concept of anicca, or impermanence. But it's not just a spiritual idea, it's a description of the mechanics of the universe. The truth is simple, but it's terrifying to the modern mind. Everything ends.
And we're not talking about eventually, are we? Like, we're not talking about death in 50 years.
No. We are talking about now. Every breath you just took, It's gone. It's halfway to its last. Every thought you have dissolves before the next one even arrives.
It's like trying to hold on to mist. But here's my issue with that. It induces anxiety. I mean, if everything is slipping away constantly, how do you build anything? We spend our whole lives building. We build careers, families, reputations.
We do. Think of it like building sandcastles at the tide line. We build these intricate structures, our identities, our beliefs about who we are. We shape them with so much care. We polish the turrets. We guard the gates.
And then the wave comes.
The wave always comes.
And when it washes the castle away, we completely panic. We say, my life is ruined, or, this shouldn't be happening to me.
That's the friction point right there. We suffer not because things end, because things must end. We suffer because we pretend they won't. We confuse the leaf for the river. We try to freeze the water.
So the suffering comes from the resistance, from standing in front of the wave and yelling at it to stop.
Precisely. We treat the wave as an enemy. But what if the wave is an invitation? What if the destruction of the sandcastle is actually necessary? Think about the lotus flower. It's a common image, sure, but biologically it's fascinating.
Right, it grows in the mud.
It needs the mud. It roots itself in decaying organic matter. It literally eats death to create the bloom.
Wow. So without the decay of the old year or the rotting of our past failures, there's no fuel for the new growth.
That's the biology of it. Death is not the opposite of life, it is the soil of life. Without endings, there is simply no space for beginnings.
I get the logic, I really do, but emotionally, that's a tough sell. We have these rigid ideas of how our lives should look. I should be married by this age. I should be a VP by that age. It feels like we write our stories in permanent marker.
And when reality shifts, because reality is fluid, we break. Not because the world ended, but because our story did. We are trying to be statues in a world that is a river.
So the alternative is what? Being water.
Being fluid.
Yeah.
Profound flexibility. Ask yourself this. How many versions of you have already died?
Oh, wow. That's a heavy question. I mean, the version of me that was a kid believing in Santa Claus is definitely dead. The teenager who thought they knew everything, totally dead. Even the person I was 5 years ago feels like a stranger now.
And at the time when those versions of you were ending, it probably felt like the world was collapsing.
It felt like an earthquake.
But looking back, wasn't that death also a birth? Did that teenager have to die for the adult to emerge?
Yeah. Yeah, they did. If I was still that teenager, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation. I'd probably be sulking in my room somewhere.
This touches on the concept of anatta, or no self. It's tricky for us in the West because we are so obsessed with individualism. We think there's this solid block of me inside that stays the exact same from birth to death.
I certainly feel like a solid block most days. I wake up and I'm still me.
You feel a continuity, sure, but think of a candle flame. If you use one candle to light another and then another, the flame passes along. Is it the same flame?
It's continuous, but the fuel is different. The moment is different.
You are that flame. You are a flowing stream of sensations, thoughts, roles, and biological processes. You are not the same person who woke up this morning.
And science actually backs this up, right? We talk about neuroplasticity.
We do.
It's not just a buzzword. Our brains are physically rewiring themselves constantly. I was reading that every time we learn a new fact or break a habit or even just take a different route to work, we are physically changing the structure of the brain. Old synaptic connections wither away, they literally die off, and new ones ignite.
You are biologically dying and being reborn thousands of times a day. We just don't notice it because it's seamless.
But we fight it on the macro level. We armor ourselves. We want to be consistent. We think safety means being a rock.
But rocks get worn down by the river. Water does not. True safety lies in fluidity. If you are water, you can handle the rocks. You can move around obstacles. If you are rigid, you shatter.
Okay, I want to talk about the scary part of this. Because being fluid sounds graceful and poetic, but in practice, that space between who we were and who we are becoming, it doesn't feel like a river. It feels like a void. It feels terrible.
It is a void, and culturally we hate the void. We rush to fill it with noise, distractions, scrolling, anything to avoid the silence, but that void is the most critical part of the process.
This reminds me of the biology of the caterpillar. We all know the story. Caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, it's on inspirational posters everywhere, but the actual biology inside that cocoon is like a horror movie.
It's remarkably violent.
When a caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it doesn't just sprout wings, it dissolves. It releases enzymes that digest its own body. It turns into soup.
Histolysis. It breaks down into a chaotic, formless broth of cells. If you opened a chrysalis halfway through, you wouldn't see a cute half caterpillar. You'd see a mess.
And I think that is such a validating image for anyone going through a hard time, because sometimes life feels like you've turned to soup. You don't know who you are anymore, you've lost the structure of the caterpillar, but you aren't a butterfly yet, you're just goo.
And here's the part that really gets me. Within that goo, that soup, there were these specific clusters of cells called imaginal cells. They hold the blueprint for the butterfly. They're always there, waiting. But, and this is crucial, at first, the caterpillar's immune system attacks them.
Wait, really? The old body attacks the new potential?
Yes. The old self perceives the new self as a threat. It fights the transformation.
That explains so much. That explains why we self-sabotage, why we try to go back to exes, or why we cling to jobs we hate. It's our psychological immune system trying to kill the butterfly because it's foreign.
Exactly. We fight the dissolve. But the soup phase, that feeling of being lost or the dark night of the soul, isn't a sign that something has gone wrong. It is the sign that the process is working. It is not failure, it is initiation.
That completely reframes the midlife crisis or the burnout or the heartbreak. It's not, I failed at being a caterpillar. It's, I am becoming something else.
We have to distinguish between identity and essence. The caterpillar is the identity, the job title, the relationship status, the costume you wear.
We love our costumes. We think we are the costume.
But we aren't. We are the luminous awareness beneath the costume, the essence. When you realize you aren't the costume, the death of the costume loses its sting. You can let the caterpillar dissolve because you know the life force isn't dying, it's just changing form.
Okay, so if we accept this, that we are fluid, that the soup phase is necessary, how do we actually live this? Because waiting for a massive crisis to force us into the chrysalis sounds exhausting. I don't want to have a breakdown just to grow. How do we die well on a daily basis?
That is the ultimate question. How do we practice this? We do it by noticing the micro-deaths.
Micro-deaths. Give me an example of that.
The empty coffee cup. You finish your coffee. That experience is over. The cup is empty. Instead of immediately getting up to wash it or checking your phone, just pause. Breathe into that empty space.
Just sit with the doneness of it.
Yes. The conversation naturally concludes. The task checked off. Feel the lightness of it. That space is not a void to be feared. It's potential.
I've actually been trying a version of this recently, an evening ritual. Usually we review our day by asking, what did I achieve or what did I screw up? But I've started asking, what died in me today?
It's a beautiful practice. What comes up when you ask that?
Surprisingly, it's usually good things, like my need to be right in that meeting died today, or my anger about the traffic died.
You're identifying the shedding of skin. When you name it, you can honor it. Okay, my anxiety about that email died today. Good. I release it. You can even do it physically. Write down an old belief that is limiting you, like, I need to be perfect to be loved. Write it on paper and burn it.
There's something so primal about fire, isn't there? Making the invisible visible.
It anchors the transformation in the body. It tells your brain, this is real. I am letting this go.
It sounds a lot like what psychologists call cognitive diffusion. You're stepping back and observing the thought, rather than being the thought.
You are the sky. The thoughts are just the weather. The storm comes, the storm breaks, the clouds disperse.
Yeah.
But the sky remains. You don't have to hold on to the clouds.
But we do hold on. We hoard our clouds, we collect them in a heavy bag and drag them around everywhere we go.
You do, and that is why we feel heavy. That is why we feel stuck.
Yeah.
Because we are carrying around the corpses of old thoughts, old identities, old hurts.
So letting go isn't losing something, it's putting down a heavy bag you've been carrying for 10 years.
It's making room. The river doesn't mourn the leaf, because the river knows that by letting the leaf go, it feeds the banks downstream. It creates compost for new life.
I want to circle back to that dawn imagery we started with. There's a specific concept for that empty space, isn't there? Shunyata.
Shunyata. Emptiness. Now, hearing that word in English, emptiness, sounds depressing. It sounds like nothingness. But in the philosophy, it's the fertile void. It is the ground of all possibility.
It's the blank page.
It is the moment before the sun rises when the world holds its breath. No past, no future, just potential. If your cup is full of old tea, you can't pour fresh water into it. You have to empty the cup. Shunyata is the empty cup waiting to be filled.
And this brings us to the choice, because rebirth, or this constant renewal, isn't something that just happens to us. It feels like we have to actively participate.
It is absolutely a choice. We often think we're waiting for freedom, but we are actually the ones holding the keys. We're the ones choosing to resurrect our old chains every single morning.
Resurrecting our chains, that hits hard.
We wake up and we put the costume back on.
Yeah.
We remember our grudges. We remember our limitations. We tell ourselves the same old story. I am the anxious one. I am the one who always fails at relationships. We resurrect the chain.
So the practice is to stop. To wake up and say, I don't have to wear that today.
Exactly. The paradox is that the more you allow your ego, your image, your need to control to die, the more alive you actually become. You stop performing life and you start living it.
Stop acting and start being.
And that is where the joy is. That is where the spontaneity lives. When you aren't protecting a sandcastle, you can finally play in the waves.
I'm just thinking about how this applies to someone listening right now who might feel like they are in the middle of a death phase. Maybe they lost a job or a marriage ended, or they just feel that profound internal shift where nothing fits anymore. It feels like the end of the world.
To them, I would say, you are right. It is the end of the world, the end of that world, the end of that version of reality.
Mm.
And it is entirely okay to grieve it. It is okay to sit in the darkness of the chrysalis. But do not mistake the process for the destination.
The soup is not the end.
The soup is the bridge. And you don't have to force the wings. You don't have to know what comes next. The blueprint is already there within you. Your only job is to surrender to the process, to trust the histolysis.
Trust the mess.
Trust the mess. Because from that rich decay, something wilder is going to grow, something freer.
It's funny, we started this walk by looking at a leaf on a river. And usually a leaf falling is a sign of winter, of things going dormant. But if you zoom out,
the falling leaf is the promise of spring. It is the cycle sustaining itself.
So as we wrap up this walk along the riverbank, let's go back to that visualization one last time.
Yes. Stand there. The sun has risen a little higher now. The light is hitting the water. You see another leaf drifting by.
And instead of feeling that pang of loss,
smile. Bow to it internally. And whisper, thank you.
Thank you for showing me how to let go.
Because in that release, you realize something profound. You don't vanish when you let go. You become the current.
And death was never the end.
It was the door. And you have been holding the key all along.
But, you know, before we leave the river entirely, there's one final thought I want to leave you, the listener, with. We've talked so much about the leaf in the river, but what if the river itself is just a single drop in a much larger ocean? What if even the river will one day evaporate, become rain, and fall somewhere entirely new? If even the flow itself is impermanent, then perhaps there is truly nothing left to hold on to. And maybe, just maybe, that is the ultimate liberation. Something to carry with you today. Thank you for walking with us.
Thank you.